Welcome back. This is part D of the spending plan lesson in the money management unit. In our last part of the lesson, we left off discussing how to estimate your expenses. And you went through an activity where you used your own expenses to estimate where you're spending most of your money. Were you spending money on more fixed expenses, variable expenses, or periodic expenses? So you completed activity 1.8, my expenses, and you used your disappearing dollars. That was one of the first activities that you did in this guidebook to group your expenses into categories. So we were looking for taking all of your different expenses, whether you spent money on food or a cell phone or clothing, and grouping them into the all those categories of expenses. So the fixed expenses, the variable expenses, and the periodic expenses. Now, when you grouped all of these into categories, you may have seen right now that a lot of your expenses were more in the variable and periodic expense portions. However, depending on what types of items you have to pay for, that is going to change as you get older, as you get a job that pays more, and as you have more responsibilities like purchasing a car or using a cell phone or even renting a house. So these percentages right now, you might see a lot in the variable range and the periodic range, but just know that as your life changes, the expense categories might change as well. For me personally, my biggest category is the fixed expense. Most of the money that I make goes towards my fixed expenses for my rent, my car bill, my cell phone bill, and insurance. All right, so far we have been able to look at our sources of income and identify our income. We've estimated our expenses. And I hope you understand at this point that you shouldn't be spending more each month than you're making per month. If you only make $50 a month, then you shouldn't be spending over $50 on items. You will run out of money that way, and you won't be able to pay your bills. Okay, so what can we do with this information? We know our income, we know our expenses, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, what about all the savings that I also need to account for? If you remember back to Michael and Selena, we showed you an example of their expenses on page 27 in your student manual. Michael had some pretty good expenses already taken care of, and he was able to keep his expenses below how much income he made. So what he was spending was less than his income, so that's a good thing. However, when we added some of his savings goals in, we found that his expenses were over the amount that he was making. So how can we fix this problem? Well, one way to do that is to pay yourself first. So in the month, when you get your income, set aside money for your big ticket items. So if you're saving to buy new tires like Michael was, or college, or maybe you're just saving up for a new pair of shoes, set aside that money as soon as you get your income. All right, so put that money aside. Also, avoid borrowing. So if you have a credit card or you have to take out loans, some people do need to take out loans in order to make ends meet, especially for going to college or buying a house or a car. But borrowing money also adds interest. So if I borrow $300 from the bank, I have to pay them back, but I also have to pay them back extra. So if you can avoid borrowing money, that's a great way to save yourself money in the future. It's also very wise to save a little bit of the money that you make to save for later. It's no fun to have to pay all of your bills, and once all your bills are paid, realize that you really don't have a lot of money left over for yourself for entertainment purposes or even for shopping for clothes. So just take a little bit of the money that you know you've made and set it aside so that you know you have something little that you can use for yourself in the future. And what's really exciting about when you pay yourself first, when you get your income, is every time you pay yourself first, you have more money to spend later on things that are important to you. So if you look down the side, what does this say? It says save. Save your money. That's really what paying yourself first is all about. It's about saving your money up so that you have money for your goals and also some extra money just for yourself as well. So if you haven't already, I want you to pause this and read page 28 in your student guide. The whole page 28 is about paying yourself first. It's also going to talk just a little bit about an emergency fund, so putting money aside for later in case you don't have the money that you need. So read the entire page 28, and then the top of page 29, that first little section, is also about paying yourself first. So pause this right now and go ahead and read page 28 and the top of page 29. Okay, so we have identified our income. We've also figured out our expenses. Now it's time to start putting this all together. So in an ideal situation, you always want to spend money at or below your means. That means that your income needs to be more than you're making or equal to the expenses that you have to pay each month. So what you make needs to be more than what you pay. I want you to see an example of a spending plan or a budget, and there's one on page 30. It's Michael's spending page. So turn to page 30 and let's look at Michael's spending plan together. So there are 6 good steps to use when you're planning a budget. The first is to decide the time frame that you're going to be tracking your income and your expenses. So Michael's budget is set up as a monthly budget. He looks at how much he's going to spend per month, how much he's making per month, and he creates his budget, his spending plan, every month. That's relatively what most people do. If you make more money every week, or maybe you get your paycheck every week, it might be easier for you to plan out weekly how much you're spending, if you want to use that paycheck every week or not. But that's up to everybody individually. So you could track your spending weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. You probably don't want to go any further out than 1 month. It can be very difficult to see what you need to spend money on further than that. So Michael, his net pay, so that's after taxes and anything else that comes out of his salary, he gets $544 a month. That's pretty great. That's a little bit more than $100 every week that he's making. And then he's listed his income, that's step 2. And step 3, which we've already talked about, is to use a spending log to create categories and predict the amount that you need for each of your expenses. So here is Michael's expenses listed. So he paid himself first for tires. That was a big goal for Michael. He knows that he's got to get tires in the near future. So he is going to take $160 off the top to pay for tires. Some of his fixed expenses include insurance and cell phone. So he has to pay those every month. And then food and gas, clothes, entertainment, and gifts. Food, gas, clothes, and entertainment. Those are his variable expenses. Those change each month. And then gifts are something that could happen on occasion. You want to have money set aside so that you can get your friend a birthday gift. So Michael, after he has budgeted for his expenses, he found that his total expenses are $545. Well, let's compare that to his income. His income, he's only making $544. If we look, our income, what we're making, needs to be bigger or equal to our expenses. Unfortunately for Michael, he is $1 short. His income is $1 less than his expenses. So that's something that we'll need to adjust. So here are some things that you can do if you need to fix your expenses. So if your expenses are larger than your income, if you're paying more than you're getting, which Michael is, then here's some things that you can do. First thing you can do, you can lower your variable expenses. So you can reduce how much you're spending on variable expenses. For Michael, if we wanted to reduce variable expenses, that would be lowering how much he's paying for food, or reducing how much he's paying for gas or clothes and personal or entertainment. So these 4 categories, food, gas, clothes, and entertainment, these are areas that Michael could reduce his spending. Why can't we reduce our fixed prices? So why wouldn't we want to reduce insurance or cell phone, or even his tires, that pay yourself first savings? Well, those are those are expenses that we have to pay. If we don't pay them, if we don't pay that exact amount, then for Michael, it means that he might not have a cell phone to use. His carrier will drop him and he won't be able to make texts or calls. Insurance is something that they will drop you as well if you're not making your payments, and you need insurance to make sure that you're covered for safety reasons. Another way to make sure that you have a higher income than your expenses is to increase your income. Maybe you need to work a few more hours. For Michael, that might not be something that he's capable of doing. If he is in high school, then he can only work a set amount of hours per week outside of school. So this for Michael might not be a good idea. He can't work more, so we're going to have to come up with another way to fix our situation. Another way is to reduce unnecessary expenses. Now, again, insurance and cell phone are necessary expenses. Food and gas are also necessary expenses. Sometimes clothes could be a necessary expense as well. If it's fall and you need some winter outfits, that could be a necessary expense. So areas that you might also consider reducing would be places like entertainment. $80 for entertainment is a lot. That's a lot of movies and popcorn and video games that he's playing. Another place that you could possibly reduce your expenses are in your gifts, in your gift giving. Okay, so there's 3 ways that we can fix Michael's problem of spending too much, spending more than he's making. And you can see there's lots of options. There is no right or wrong option. For you personally, you might decide, well, I don't need to spend money on entertainment. But if video gaming or going out to see movies is something that's really important to you, then you're going to have to figure out another way to make sure that your income is a bigger number than your expenses. Now, this is not always going to be the case that we have a problem where you're spending more than what you're making. There are going to be times, and this is always an exciting time, when your income, what you're making, is bigger than what you're spending. That's a good thing. That means that you have money left over. So some ideas to help balance that out. What can you do with that extra money? Well, you can increase your savings funds. If you are only saving $120 per month for something that you need later, you could increase that to $140. That means that you're going to make your goal faster, or you could have more money saved up for whatever it is that you're saving for. Maybe you're saving for a trip. You need $300 for a trip. Well, wouldn't it be nice if you had $400 for a trip? You could buy some more souvenirs or do some more fun activities on that trip than the $300 could get you. You could also reduce any loan obligations. So if you have to pay back a car loan or student loans, or maybe you just have to pay back a credit card, it's always a good idea to pay more on those loans so they can go down faster. That's going to reduce also the amounts that you have to pay back in the end. So that reduces a lot of your money as well, and that reduces the interest. So those are some things that you can do if your income is greater than your expenses. I'd also like to suggest that you keep a little bit of money on hand for emergencies. They talked about that for the pay yourself first. Always keep a little bit of money on hand for emergencies. And then what you can do with the rest of your money is save it for something fun or reduce your loans. Those are 2 ideas and options for you. All right, so we've kind of fixed the problem for Michael. We've looked at his plan and we've said we need to fix it. He needs to come up with at least $1 less that he is spending each month. So that was steps 3 and 4. Step 5 for creating a plan is to really use this plan. Use your spending plan. If you're not going to use it, then you're going to find that you're going to run out of money quickly. And number 6, the last step, is to review and adjust your plan as you need. Sometimes you're going to find that you need to make adjustments. One month you might have to make a big spending purchase and you're going to have to spend less. It's okay to change your plan, but just know that you need to stick to it. All right, that's all the time we have in this section. We have one more section where you are going to attempt to make some spending plans of your own. So come back soon, see what that lesson plan looks like as well.